In a world where deception intertwines with ambition, betrayal becomes a bitterly personal affair. This is a story of hidden truths and tangled relationships, where trust is shattered and revenge is a seductive force. When a clandestine affair leads to a web of lies and stolen identities, the lives of those involved are irrevocably altered. As Jake proudly embraces his role as a father, unaware of the true lineage of his children, the man wronged by his deceit grapples with the complexity of his emotions, with the paternity of both Chris and Trisha revealed and Anne's desires adding to the turbulence. The lines between love, revenge, and justice blur. In this intricate dance of deceit and retribution, every choice carries weight, and the future remains precariously balanced on the edge of moral ambiguity. What happens when the pursuit of vengeance threatens to consume everything? This story unveils the unraveling of lives caught in a cruel game of betrayal and the quest for redemption that follows. Welcome to the Cheaters Exposed. If this is your first visit, make sure to subscribe for more real-life stories like this one. The day was a relentless shade of gray, the kind that seemed to swallow the world whole, mirroring the suffocating heaviness in my chest as we gathered to lay my grandfather to rest. The sky itself seemed to mourn with us, a bleak reflection of the profound loss that had gripped our family. His death wasn't just the loss of a beloved patriarch. It was the gaping void of a life that had shaped all our lives in ways we were only beginning to understand. The air was thick with grief, each breath a reminder of his absence. Our family, usually a vibrant tapestry of laughter and love, was now shrouded in a somber cloak. Faces that once shone with joy were now etched with deep lines of sorrow and disbelief. The church, normally a place of refuge and celebration, felt like a cold, sterile chamber filled with hushed whispers and the occasional choked sob. Emma, my fiancée, was by my side, her presence a steady anchor in the storm of my emotions. We got engaged 3 months ago, having dated for 2 years. She was loved and welcomed by all my family members. Her hand gripped mine with a tenderness that spoke volumes. It was a silent promise of support and solidarity. Emma had always been my rock, the person I trusted with my deepest fears and hopes. I clung to her, hoping her strength would somehow seep into me and numb the raw ache. As we moved from the church to the gravesite, the world felt like it was spinning out of control. The weight of the day's events pressed down on me, and I couldn't shake the creeping unease that something wasn't right. But I dismissed it, attributing the strange sensation to the overwhelming tide of my sadness. Jake, my cousin, who had always been like a brother to me, was doing his best to offer comfort. He had a way of speaking that was both soothing and oddly comforting, as though his mere presence was a balm for the wounds of grief. Little did I know that the solace he provided would soon unravel into something far more unsettling and deeply personal. The lines between comfort and betrayal were about to blur in ways I never could have anticipated. The funeral had concluded, but the wake continued at our family home. What had once been a space filled with joyous celebrations now bore the heavy weight of mourning. The house, typically a beacon of warmth and vitality, was now cloaked in a somber veil, its atmosphere saturated with whispered condolences and shared sorrow. Guests had come and gone, leaving behind a palpable silence that hung in the air. As the evening progressed and the last of the guests departed, I found myself wrestling with a sense of unease. The house, now quiet and tired, seemed to close in around me. I decided to take a walk, the chill of the night air offering a brief respite from the stifling grief inside. With a sudden, almost inexplicable urge, I headed towards Jake's house. A dim light flickered through the window of Jake's room, catching my eye as I approached. Driven by a mix of curiosity and an unsettling feeling I couldn't shake, I drew closer. Through the partially open window, I began to hear muffled sounds that were unmistakably intimate. Normally, I might have ignored such noises, considering Jake's reputation and the current circumstances. But there was something about these sounds that struck a nerve, making my heart race with a growing sense of dread. Peering through the window, I was met with a scene that nearly stopped my heart. Inside, Emma, my fiancée, was clearly involved in a private moment with Jake. It was an intense sexual session, driven by a raw, almost desperate energy, a stark contrast to the grief we had all been experiencing. Overwhelmed by a surge of emotions, I pushed open the door and was met with the harsh reality of the betrayal before me. I could not explain what I saw. My Emma was bent over, holding the bed rail the way she liked it as Jake was taking her from behind in doggy style. Tears ran down my face as I shouted. Emma was scrambling to cover herself while Jake, clearly caught in the act, looked both guilty and desperate. My voice trembled as I managed to choke out, "What's going on?" Emma's face was flushed with a deep sense of shame as she stammered, "It's not what you think. I can explain." Her attempts to explain fell flat, failing to mask the magnitude of what I had just witnessed. Jake, his face pale with panic, moved toward me. "It was a mistake," he pleaded, but his words were hollow, offering no real comfort. I started walking away from the house and was immediately followed by Jake. In a burst of raw emotion, I slapped him across the face, the sting of the blow a mere echo of the deeper pain I felt. "Fuck off," I demanded, my voice a strained whisper of anguish. "I need to be alone." As I stepped back into the night, the cold air was a harsh contrast to the searing hurt inside me. The house, once a sanctuary of family and love, now stood as a monument to shattered trust. The weight of the night's revelations left me reeling, struggling to process the deep and painful fractures that had been cruelly exposed. Months drifted by, and life began to regain its rhythm after the funeral. Emma's relentless pleas for forgiveness fell on deaf ears. The wound was too deep, and I couldn't bring myself to heal the rift that had opened between us. I called off our planned wedding and kept the details of the betrayal tightly guarded. I didn't share the truth with friends, family, Oregon, even Emma's relatives. Officially, I cited irreconcilable differences as the reason for our breakup, a sanitized explanation that did little to capture the chaos beneath. Jake, my cousin, also tried to make amends. After a few months of distance and coldness, we started exchanging pleasantries at family gatherings. Yet despite our attempts to rebuild some semblance of normalcy, the bond we once had was irreparably damaged. Even though we lived in the same city, our interactions remained superficial and distant. 3 years passed, and Jake got married. I didn't attend his wedding, citing an official business trip as the reason for my absence. In truth, I couldn't bear the thought of being there, witnessing a celebration that felt tainted by the past. When Christmas rolled around, our family reunion brought Jake's new wife, Anne, to my parents' home. I recognized her immediately. Anne and I had a brief, casual fling back in university 7 years ago. It was nothing serious, just a short-lived sexual affair that had ended with no real contact since. Seeing her again was a curious twist of fate, but I dismissed it as insignificant, given her current marital status. On my way out, I ran into Anne. We exchanged polite greetings and a few words, but nothing more. I thought nothing of it until the next day when I saw Anne again, this time with Jake. To my surprise, Anne acted as if we were meeting for the first time, completely ignoring our previous acquaintance. It was disconcerting, and I wasn't sure what to make of it, but I chose to play along, not wanting to stir up any unnecessary drama. Jake's work as an engineer in the mining industry meant he followed a rigorous 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off schedule. This rotation was designed to balance the demands of his job with periods of rest and personal time. It was a schedule that allowed him to manage the intense nature of his work, while also providing space for individual and family life. Despite this structure, the personal dynamics within our extended family remained complex and strained, leaving me to navigate these relationships with cautious detachment. My house was 20 minutes from the new apartment where Jake lived with his wife. One day, I received a call from Anne asking for help because the power was out in their apartment while Jake was away on a 2-week rotation. I arrived and quickly fixed the blown fuse. On my way home, she invited me to stay for dinner as a way of expressing her gratitude. As a bachelor who appreciates a home-cooked meal, I gladly accepted. She prepared a delicious chicken satay and paired it with a delightful red wine. After a few drinks, she suggested we play a game of truth or dare. There's usually something problematic about that game. It's not surprising that the game is sometimes called the devil's game, given its reputation for leading to unexpected or risky situations. Despite suspecting that Anne might be up to something naughty, I decided to go along with it. After a few drinks, I couldn't help but be captivated by how stunning Anne looked in her form-fitting, revealing gown. I found myself reminiscing about our time together 7 years ago and immersing myself in those memories. One thing led to another while playing the devil's game, and we ended up making passionate love and spending the night together in her apartment. The next morning, we vowed not to let it happen again, but by the evening, Anne invited me back to her apartment, and we ended up making passionate love once more. You see, Anne allowed me to touch her in places that her husband could not. She wanted to explore BDSM and anal, which I gladly obliged her. I prefer to be dom-dominant, and she submissive. Before I knew it, our exploration had developed into a full-blown affair. Anne would often compare me to my cousin Jake and praise my sexual prowess. I explored parts of her that had never been explored by anyone before. I knew we were playing a dangerous game, but I couldn't have cared less. We never see each other during the 2 weeks when Jake is around. Once he leaves on Sunday, my time begins, and it feels as if we are co-husbands to Anne, Jake's wife. Sometimes, even when Jake was present, Anne would send me erotic messages and nude pictures. Once she sends photos of her vagina while lying down on the bed with Jake with capture, "Care for the moon pie?" 3 months into our clandestine affair, Anne delivered unexpected news. She was pregnant. She informed me that the child was mine, given the timing of conception. It was a complex situation, but I didn't oppose her decision to pin the paternity on Jake. In truth, I had little interest in the details or repercussions. Our relationship had become more about convenience and mutual satisfaction than any deeper emotional connection. As the pregnancy progressed, my mother, who had been persistently nudging me towards marriage and grandparenthood, inadvertently added to the irony of the situation. During a conversation, she mentioned with excitement that Jake's wife was expecting a baby boy. Unbeknownst to her, the child she was referring to was actually my son. I chose not to disclose the truth, partly out of indifference and partly because I wanted to avoid complicating an already delicate situation. Life continued, and Anne and I maintained our affair, though the dynamics shifted with the arrival of our son. He was born and grew into a lively 3-year-old. Now and then, during my shopping trips or casual outings, I would see Jake proudly parading the child around, laughing and showing him off as his own. It was a surreal experience watching Jake interact with my son, fully believing he was his biological child. On one occasion, we happened to run into each other at the mall. Jake, with his usual easy demeanor, introduced my son to me as if we were meeting for the first time. He even encouraged the boy to greet me, a gesture that felt oddly familiar and unsettling. The name Chris, which Anne had insisted on for the child, was what I proposed. Despite the deceit and emotional turmoil, I remained detached, focusing on maintaining my boundaries and keeping a semblance of normalcy. The lines between truth and pretense blurred as Jake continued to live out the role of a father to my son while I observed from a distance, detached yet deeply entangled in the unspoken complexities of our lives. Fast forward to the present day, and the complexities of my situation have only deepened. Anne's second child, Trisha, now 2 years old, is also mine. 2 weeks ago, I confirmed this with a paternity test, which revealed that both Chris and Trisha are my biological children. Anne, who is now 3 weeks pregnant again, will soon give birth to my second son. I haven't yet decided on a name for him, but the weight of this decision looms heavily over me. Jake remains blissfully unaware of the full extent of the deception that has unfolded. He continues to fulfill his role as the father to both Chris and Trisha, supporting and training them while I maintain a detached but watchful distance. He plays the role of the proud father, blissfully ignorant of the truth, parading his supposed family as if he truly owns them. His smugness and his casual boasts about his children only fuel the bitterness that festers within me. Anne's current dissatisfaction with Jake has intensified. She's begun expressing a desire for us to be together as a family, to raise our children away from the tangled web of deceit. The idea of uniting with her and our children, free from Jake's shadow, has become increasingly appealing. Anne, who now shares my frustration and resentment, is keen for a change. Amidst all this, Jake's assets have been transferred into the names of my children. Recently, I managed to convince Anne to persuade Jake to take out a $1 million life insurance policy, further securing our future. The complexity of these machinations and the potential for future gain have left me conflicted. My mind wrestles with darker thoughts. The idea of eliminating Jake to seize everything, his wife, my children, and his properties, has become a disturbing yet compelling consideration. The notion of achieving complete control and exacting retribution weighs heavily on me. The emotional turmoil and the pressure to resolve this tangled situation cast a long shadow over my thoughts, leaving me torn between a desire for revenge and a complicated, uncertain future. The path forward remains unclear, shrouded in a mix of moral ambiguity and personal ambition. As I stand on the precipice of this tangled web of deception and betrayal, the future remains uncertain, the allure of revenge and the prospect of seizing everything. Jake holds dear tug at me, but the reality of the situation is far more complex. The lives of my children, the well-being of Anne, and the ethical implications of my choices weigh heavily on me. I am caught between the drive for vengeance and the possibility of redemption. While Jake continues to play the role of the proud father, oblivious to the truth, I must decide whether to reveal the deception and claim my rightful place in my children's lives, or to let the charade continue, allowing the bitter taste of betrayal to linger. Ultimately, the decision will shape not only my future, but the lives of everyone involved. The path I choose will reflect the man I become, either embracing the chaos of retribution or seeking a path of reconciliation and integrity. The coming days will test my resolve and define the course of our intertwined lives, revealing whether the pursuit of vengeance is worth the cost of losing what truly matters. If you have enjoyed the story, please like, share, and feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments section. Kindly subscribe to Cheaters Exposed for more intriguing stories. Thank you.